sex on step 4. You good?
I do. Yeah. Higher and higher. Hi, I'm Mike Hess. I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here this afternoon. I saw Mike Hess on the schedule for now. I didn't know it was me. I repeat this every year when I speak here, but it's the truth. 3 weeks ago, Bob calls me at home and says, what would you like to speak on this year? Now, you would think you'd learn after a few times having this conversation. And he said, how about step 1 or 3 maybe? And we talked about those. And then he said, perhaps step 12. And I said, well, I just did that last year. And he goes, yeah, I don't want to do that again. It was too good. And I get the schedule, and I'm on fear and sex again. Two of my favorite subjects. There are 2 character instincts that I appreciate a lot. I'd like more of one and less of the other, but I recognize them as necessary. Before I start, I do want to thank the other speakers. Stateline has some of the best speakers I've ever heard, with one exception. And if I called you out by name and tried to remember everything you said or the clever things, I would be doing a disservice. I mean, my grand sponsor, St. Maryland, spoke last night. It's I don't know why they don't ask her to do fear and sex. I would actually like to hear that. I never thought much about it, but and everybody did an outstanding job, seriously. From the first night coming in and listening to the guys start off the meeting about other topics other than the steps, there's just been a nice atmosphere here. But I want to tell you who's my hero for the weekend and will be the whole weekend. And that's Don G. from last night. And I'll tell you why, even if you were here. I know what kind of fear he had about coming up to the podium. And I know what that kind of terror is like. And to risk looking bad has been my greatest fear. And so when I see another fellow human being get up and take that chance in public in front of this many people, I'm impressed. That was big enough in itself. The other part, though, that got to me was this. Don's message on step 1 was different than anything I've ever heard in my life, actually. But the real message in it, the thing that he hit upon several times, was his recognition of the fact that he needs AA, that no matter what his emotions are like, no matter what's going on in his world, no matter what confusion there is, no matter how well he works a program or doesn't work it, the bottom line is his recognition of the fact that I need to keep in mind, I need Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just a real big deal. And he also said several times during the talk that he would call his mother and ask her, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And I don't know why she never said this, but I wish she'd have just said to him, it's because you dress like Richard Simmons. And you have a mullet. And Don, what I really appreciated was the fact that you thought the curls in the back of the mullet were important. I dreamt a monster that looked like that came to my room last night. It was like, oh my God. I will never get that vision out of my mind. And I've prayed on it a lot. Huh? Anyway, I'm serious about you impressed me a lot. All right, so I'm supposed to speak on these two subjects. But before I do, I want to talk a little bit about my background. I know an awful lot of you, and I've spoken here much too much. But there's several things that I think are important for me to explain about what I think at this point in my sobriety about my relationship with the steps and the higher power. I heard a guy recently at a meeting. I was on a Zoom meeting, and he finished up the meeting by this, a comment, something like this. He said, when I do my inventory at the end of the day, I look at it this way, that anything that happened today was God's will. Now, I imagine that's a very comforting way to look at life, but I don't have that same idea. And I'm not saying he's right or wrong. Well, actually, I'm saying he's wrong, but I'm not saying I can't prove it, is all I'm really saying. Because here's what confuses me sometimes. If everything that happens in the world is God's will, why do I need to pray for knowledge of it and the power to carry it out? It would seem like it would just happen automatically. And I know in my own experience in looking at my own behavior with fear and sex, as well as lots of other things, I don't believe my conduct always conforms to what the higher power would prefer that I do. And so I just want you to know that's where I come from. It really isn't a criticism. It's just a very profound statement. And the other thing I sometimes wonder about in my world is, well, let me change it to this. I've been convinced for a long time that the one danger I can have as a member of AA, and especially someone who speaks occasionally, is if I have an image that I have to keep up, I'm in a lot of trouble. I have to be able, and some of you shared some really important things already this weekend. It would be easy to get up and just maybe try to give a clever or funny talk, which is what I know you would prefer. But here's what I often need to hear. The people that impacted me sometimes the most were the ones that were struggling the most. And I'll go to somebody who was maybe the most famous AA since I've been sober. That was Chuck Chamberlain. And he used to say things like this, that sometimes praying for him was like blowing smoke up a chimney. It had no effect. And the reason that was important is I went to hear him speak when I was brand new several times. And he seemed to really believe that a higher power could run our lives if we surrendered, if we turned our will and our lives over to the care of God. He seemed to believe that the details of alcoholics' lives, not just the obsession to drink, but all of it, could be handled or guided by God. And I wanted to believe that. The difficulty in surrendering or not doing God's will for someone like me isn't that I don't want to do it. It's I don't know what it is. I don't know what God's role is in my life compared to my role. I mean, I can go to a meeting and people can say, whatever the topic happens to be, well, just do the footwork. Just do the footwork. And let's do it. And then I get in my car and I realize I don't know what the footwork is. Because the footwork to me has always been to get my way. And I grew up in an alcoholic home. There's a shock, huh? I have generations of alcoholism on both sides of my family that all came together when I was born. And so one of the things I always have to keep in mind, whether I'm listening to somebody speak or just visiting with friends in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a simple proposition. We all didn't start out in the same place. We all didn't start out with the same amount of fear. We didn't all start out with the same kind of conditions that make life more difficult. And I think the generosity of the higher power is real simple. I listen to people, especially at conventions like this, when they come from all over the country. And everybody has a different way that they do it in their area, it seems like. Some people read the book together, some people don't. Some people take inventories with 4 columns, some people write paragraphs. I'm convinced that God loves us so much He doesn't care about those particulars. that what he really cares about is the fact that we just try. I have never purposely set out to do the harm that I'm going to talk about today, ever. All I was trying to do was just feel better. That's all. To escape the tortures of my own mind, not just yours, not just your criticism. But if I had to summarize fear, let me start with fear yet, because I'll get to sex, don't worry. But you and I both know there's nothing creepier than an old person talking about sex. It's just like, oh, God, no, please. It's like, don't share that. You didn't really sleep with somebody, did you? Well, yeah. On a serious note, I cringe sometimes at my home group when we'll have a speaker come in and he'll be like my age and he'll be real flirty with the girls, and throw out a few little bait, that they'll think he's really a stud. And it's like, no, you may have been a stud, but we never knew you when that was going on, and didn't want to know you. I grew up in an alcoholic home where fear was constant. And I don't mean fear like physical fear. I mean, impending doom was the way we lived. It was always going to go wrong, and often did. It was always going to be trouble, no matter what. And my poor little mother, who'd grown up in an alcoholic home and never drank in her life, and by the way, was the one that ended up going to Al-Anon to get our lives together, to get the start of the 12 steps in my family. She was scared to death. She dealt with all the problems that her family had, and then what my father had, and then what I had and what my brother had. The terrors of living with practicing active alcoholism. And she kept it together somehow. But here's how she ended up. Before Al-Anon, she got something diagnosed called agoraphobia, where she was so terrified that she could barely function. And yet she still had to, because we were all falling apart. And so one of the messages I got as a child was this: you have to be concerned about what people think of you, and really concerned. And what does that really mean in its essence? It means I give you the power to make my day okay or not. I give you absolute control as to everything. I can give a talk somewhere, and my big fear is someone won't like it. And yet, guaranteed someone won't like it, right? But as long as I'm always having to live outside of me, it was mentioned by several people, to get your approval, to tell me I'm okay, I'm in trouble. Now, I can do it. Because one of the things I'm grateful for is the way I was raised in Alcoholics Anonymous. My type of conditioning, if you will, the type of my program came out of the Pacific Group. And some of the people are here that when I got sober on May the 30th, 1980. And you have been and will be always tremendous examples to me. Examples of how to live and how to behave. Because the way I was taught was I was supposed to take actions better than the way I think and feel, no matter what's going on. That even if I'm terrified and I'm invited to speak at a podium, I get up and do it. And I run that risk, the biggest terror I have of being judged. I take the risk anyway. Why? I have another idea that could be absolutely off base. I might as well share them all and get them done, right? We talk about surrender here a lot. I've been thinking lately that there may have been a pre-surrender stage for me before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I don't know why one day I was drunk and acting as badly as I've always acted, and then within days I'm listening to some man I've never known in my life tell me how to live, and I'm doing what he said. Something started to soften me up. Words were different. When I was in the bars and you said, you're alcoholic, I used to think, well, thank you, so are you, because I saw it as a compliment. I like people who drank badly. But when I came to AA and I heard people talk about alcoholism or being alcoholic, they took on a different meaning, and I listened. And more importantly, I started to act better than the way I think and feel, even before I even wanted to be a member here. I'm a bad drunk. I've never had anybody say to me, "Why don't you have another one?" You know what I'm saying? Or a wife say, "You're a lot of fun when you come home like that." I hope we're romantic tonight. It's never been like that. I not only act drunk, I look drunk. I sound drunk. I have no defense against alcohol. Alcohol just takes me down. So, I came into AA and I started meeting people who talked about living better than the way they think and feel. And one of the great good fortunes I had when I was in early sobriety is I got invited by Chuck C. to come to his house one day with just him and his wife. And I listened to him talk about his view of the world and how much he seemed to trust a higher power actually existed for us. But he also talked about, and some of you read it in A New Pair of Glasses or heard it on the tapes from that retreat, he talked about the fact that sometimes in his life praying was like blowing smoke up a chimney. It had no effect. That sometimes he couldn't make any kind of contact with that kind of higher power. That sometimes he couldn't control his own behavior. And a phrase he often used was, and I think it directly means defects of character, at least a portion of the defects of character. Obsessions of the mind. And he used to say, and I believe to be true 44 years later, that I cannot control obsessions of my own mind. That at a certain point, no matter how much I know, no matter how many morals I have, I went to a Catholic school like Kathy. I took Latin to become a priest. I often say the church was fortunate I never went further than I did. I would have cost them even more money. And I knew right from wrong. That was never the issue. But I also grew up in a time that some of you have talked about, some of you speakers. It was a time of, Ralph talked about it today, it was a time of a lot of free love, a lot of self-obsession, a lot of times to just try to find what? Happiness. However it's defined. Just happiness. I just don't want to feel so bad anymore. What's the fear of being judged? What's that one about? That's a huge fear for me. Because I can theoretically say, what's the difference, whether I'm judged or not? What do I care what you think? Someone said it. I think Matthew said it. I don't like you, Matthew. And because he said something that I wish were true for me. Something about, I don't mind if you judge me, or something like that. I do mind. I wish I didn't. I would give almost anything not to care. But you know why I think it's so important? Why fear is such a big deal for me? Whether it's fear about talking, whether it's fear about work performance, whether it's fear about romantic performance, it doesn't make any difference. Because if somebody says it out loud, it confirms what I feel inside. Bill Wilson, our founder, I know he's a co-founder, whoever wants to correct me. Bill Wilson, our founder, uses himself as an example of things that has helped me forever. He never criticizes in his writings about other people. He's always using himself. And he has a lot of things he's written that are meaningful to me. My father got sober 10 days after I did. He came to see me. Kathy was talking about it. Remind me again. I was in my little treatment center. My mom wouldn't let my dad ride with her, but she said we need to go to the family group. That's how bad terms they were on. And he went in, and he went to the Al-Anon meeting door, and a greeter shook his hand and said, she smelled his breath after she shook his hand. She said, "Sir, I think you're looking for the meeting down the hall." And he went to AA and never drank again. He got sober. He died 16 years later. Great member of AA. Quiet. Dying of cancer, still coming to meetings, taking the actions of sobriety, putting away chairs at night. He was a tremendous man. He died in January, but in December, Christmas, right before he died, he gave me that book, Language of the Heart, which to me is golden because it's got Bill Wilson's writings in there. And one article in particular that I read again thinking about today was the article on fear. I don't know anybody that describes fear any better than the way I feel it than he does when he writes about it. And I look at that one too. He's the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, or the co-founder. He is the man who got to be with Ed Dowling. He got to be with Chuck. He got to be with Dr. Tebow, who was one of my favorite AA people. And he still suffered from fear. Now, people might say to him, well, you shouldn't have them. You must not be doing it right. And one of the lessons I believe is true is this, that just because I'm not feeling well doesn't mean I'm not doing it right. It doesn't mean I'm not working the steps. It doesn't mean I haven't surrendered. Now, sometimes it does, but oftentimes it doesn't. Because usually that kind of pain is the touchstone of spiritual growth, is what I've been taught. Pain will push me to take actions better than the way I think and feel, to read, to pray. And the other thing that has saved me all of my time in sobriety, and I will get to this topic maybe tomorrow, but is strong sponsorship. I started listening to a man tell me what to do my first couple of weeks sober, a man I didn't know. I picked him because I thought he was rich. He went bankrupt that year and had his car repoed. I'm a bad judge of those kind of things. I was planning to get a divorce, to move to Newport Beach, California, and to get out of selling real estate. I was changing everything about my life. And he told me, you're not making any major changes this first year of sobriety. And I did what a stranger I didn't even like said. That's why I'm convinced God's had some kind of hand in my coming up here way before I could realize anything. Why would I listen to him? I didn't listen to anybody. And I look back on it now and I'm amazed, not because of what I did, but because what change had already taken place just by being beaten up and in enough pain to come into the rooms of AA. And so I came in here and I started doing the things people said to do. If fear is the biggest thing I think fear underlines almost every defect of character I have, or at least it amplifies it. It comes in and it makes it worse. Because I have mistakenly believed that I'm supposed to be able to make decisions that will help me avoid pain or discomfort. Now, I don't consciously think that, but I act like it. For some reason, I think I should know exactly what it is that's going to make me happy. And I'm telling you, for me, that's just been the biggest fallacy that I've ever entertained. I can't know. I don't know what God does, and I don't know what's supposed to happen for me. The best I will ever get in looking for God is searching. The best I will ever get is trying to surrender when everything inside me tells me I don't want to surrender. So I got sponsors, and I've had 4 sponsors. Some of you knew the previous ones. They were great people. Don was my first sponsor. I had Cliff Roach. Some of you knew Cliff. He was tremendous. Len Wilder, a tremendous man. He's the man that made me start going to a men's Al-Anon group. Somehow I thought I had problems with relationships. And of course I got Bob. All different characters. Some real well known, some not known at all. But the one thing they all had in common is they were active members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they actually lived the way they talked, even if they made mistakes, which is something else I'd like to get off on for a second. It is possible, and I tell you this from experience, to make terrible decisions sober and still be okay. I don't think God punishes us. I'm going to skip to this right now. A lot of you know this. After I got sober, I ended up going back to school at nights and weekends. And through a series of things that I wasn't even looking for or planning to have happen, I went to law school, and then I became an attorney. I became a district attorney. I became a homicide attorney. I became chief of homicide. And I've dealt in violence for a lot of years, active violence. of the kind of things I would have done with my own anger, my own fear, because I think fear underlies almost all of those things. Fear and greed were the two biggest things. But the reason I bring it up in this talk today is real simply, I want you to know what I think about God does for me. I often hear people say things like, we don't understand God, when there's a terrible, violent act. I don't think God does bad things to people. I think my defects of character are the kind of things that could make me kill you or hurt you or rape you or steal from you or do all the kind of stuff. It even says in the big book, we quit blaming God. I've had to practice that more this year than most, or this last 2 years, because of my, and I'm not going to dwell on this honestly, but my daughter got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And the first thought I had to keep in mind was this: don't blame God. I don't want to lose my connection to the only thing that has made my life somewhat peaceful, because I'm not a peaceful man by nature. I'm an intense human being. So, what Bob and the other sponsors have all done is this: I tell them the truth about how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling inadequate, I say it. If I'm feeling scared, I tell them. If I'm feeling like I don't want to be in AA anymore, I share it. Right? I do the kind of things that you tell, that I was told to do, and I do it for a simple reason, selfish reason maybe. They're able to give me direction about my situation without the emotional attachment to it. They aren't emotionally involved, and they've had the experience. And if I listen, things turn out pretty well, and if I don't, it's okay too, because I'll pick up the tab for whatever that action is. There are negative tabs for all those kind of things, So let me talk a little bit more about fear. I told you I was raised in a household that was dominated by fear. The fear was the underlying thing. Even my father, he owned a bar and was a barman, then ran nightclubs. Even my dad ended up being in that kind of fearful world where he let my mother make all the decisions. And she was terrified anyway, so we're all afraid all the time. But nobody talks about it as fear. Not at all. It's more subtle than that. It's more vicious than that. Because what is fear? I mean, I know the feeling, but it goes by a lot of aliases. Worry. Concern. Nice words. Concern. I'm concerned. Care. I care about what's going to happen. All normal things. But the problem with it is we were all trying to get by in the world based on our own lack of ability to manage our own lives. And that does lead to terror and that kind of situation. You know, it got so bad we would go out to dinner and my dad wouldn't even know what to order. You know what I'm saying? One of the things that impressed me the most was I heard a lady speak from the Pacific, or heard about her. She was one of their speakers. And she said that she was so terrorized about making decisions that when she went to the supermarket and was in the meat department, she wished there was just one more kind of animal to pick from. You know, I understood that. I thought, oh my God, I'm the same way. I don't want to make a mistake. Because why? Because I will beat myself up forever for a mistake. You can criticize me and it will last for a few minutes. It may bother me, but it lingers. I go home and I think about it again, and I think, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to stop doing that. My fear has stopped me from doing more fun things on earth than I can even imagine. I can't risk looking bad. I'm the kind of person that wants to sit in the back of the room and judge, you know, not actually I'm not getting up doing karaoke. I'll tell you that right now. It's just not going to happen. I'm too cool to do that kind of stuff. I'm too cool to have fun in public. I got to just stand in the back and look at you. I look at Doug get up here, and he's so at ease. And the reason is he just doesn't know any better. And I think, why can't I be that simple? How come I don't have no shame? I think it's tremendous. I joke about those things, but it's the truth. I have been imprisoned by my own mind. I'm imprisoned by my own fears. I'm imprisoned by you when you're not even here. It's a hard way to go. And so sometimes at 44 years I say to myself, shouldn't you be better than this? And you're probably going, yeah, I think probably you should. You missed some step. I listened to Ralph talk today. He has the most soothing presence, doesn't he? And I wonder when I see other people, I'm judging your outsides, well, and your voice. By the way I'm feeling inside sometimes. And here's what I've had to do to get through this. I've had to say to God, look, I don't want to be like I am. I didn't ask for it. I didn't ask to be born into that family. I don't like having the character defects that plague my life. Do you remove them? Will you remove them? And I ask for them to be removed. And I know they do get removed. And I'll tell you why I know. I'm up here talking. I was so scared to speak in public that I wouldn't yell out bingo at a bingo game. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm worried I'm wrong. What if I don't have 065? And the reader goes, there's no 065. And everybody goes, oh, God, you know. Because they've already torn up their bingo cards. It's like, oh, shit. I'll just be quiet in the back. I took a class one time right out of high school. Teacher came in, he said, look, good news, I don't want to read all those final papers. And it was 50% of the grade. I'm going to let you all get up and give a 10-minute talk, and that'll be it. You don't have to write. The whole class cheered. I went home and never went back. I took an F because I couldn't risk it. That's the kind of fear I live with. Now, has it improved? It's improved. If you're out there like me thinking, well, God, if you still feel that way, I'm not staying here. Well, I don't blame you. Obviously, it's gotten better. I became a trial lawyer. I made my living speaking in public. I've been on television. I've been on those crime shows. I've had all those kind of things happen because somebody helped me get through those fears and sit still. Because what I'll do when I have an emotion like that that's eating at me, I'll run. I just won't do it. I'll go home and take the F. When I came to AA, people like my sponsors and other people said, no, you get up there and you share. I used to have to just say my name as a newcomer in a meeting. I'm Mike, I'm an alcoholic. And I was so petrified that I would sit down and then miss the next 15 minutes of the meeting wondering how I did. You know, oh my God, did my voice squeak? I mean, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Which brings me to one of the final things I'm going to say about fear at the moment. If I'm comparing myself to you, I'm in trouble. Big, big trouble. Now, I don't know how to stop that sometimes. And I don't mean comparing in a nice way. I mean, I can hear you say something, you went through something, and here's what you do about it. That's not comparison that I'm talking about. If I'm judging my own progress on how well you have done, I'll probably lose. Because I don't know really how you feel inside. I don't know where you started from, like Chuck used to say. He used to say we didn't all start out at the same place. Now for sex. I don't think I have done any more damage in my life in any area that wasn't driven by sex. That's a pretty proud statement, isn't it? I found sex and drinking the same week when I was 17 years old. And the satisfaction of my instincts became my whole goal in life. Every instinct, not just these two, but those two were the primary ones. And it became insatiable. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on some of that today, but let me just tell you this. I came into AA and I was new. I'd been going to a few meetings. I'd asked Don to be my sponsor. I was married. And he told me, he said, you know, you're going to, he put it this way. He said, you're a married man. You're going to keep your zipper zipped here. Well, I thought, well, that's cute advice, but I'm not doing that. And I've been watching this blonde girl at the meeting. That's the only reason I went to meetings. And she came up to me one night after our speaker meeting, and she said, where are you going after the meeting? And I was going home, but I gave her Very clever answer. I said, I don't know. And she said, look, I know you're married. I don't care. I'm lonesome. Why don't you come over tonight, no strings attached? You know, I've been going to bars all my life waiting to hear that. If I'd have known it was an Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd have joined when I was 14. I went home and looked at my wife that night and never hated her more. I was like, oh my God. I told my sponsor about it because I wanted him to know he was sponsoring a stud. And he goes, oh, it's not you, she's sick, which hurt my feelings. But the next week, she's sitting there holding another newcomer's hand. I was heartbroken. I didn't know her, but it hurt. And they both got drunk. And it was the first connection I had that sometimes my behavior might be directly related to drinking, because I, like a lot of us, thought drinking was just a choice. My defects of character are the things that have triggered all of my problems. My instincts gone astray, Bill Wilson writes. My instincts, my natural instincts, wanting too much of them. They've gone astray. They demand too much of me. There is no satisfying an instinct gone astray. There isn't. If I need your approval, you can't give me enough because there'll be somebody who doesn't give it. If I need sex, it can't be satisfied. I sponsor a lot of men, and sex is still a pretty big issue for some of them. And they wrestle with that, knowing what's right to do with the compulsion. That statement that our drinking doesn't hurt anybody much, of course, is nonsense other than ourselves. But my sexual conduct, I gave up everything to satisfy that obsession. I gave up family. I gave up reputation. And yet it didn't seem wrong to me. The guys I was running with all lived and acted the same way. I did not realize the pain. And here's the thing underlying every defect of character I have. The one thing I cannot kill is my own conscience. I want to. I want to be able to. I grew up in a time of free love. We're supposed to be able to do that and not feel guilty. But I always felt guilty. I had no standards either, which was pathetic. But I don't make light of the sex stuff at all. What I'm trying to say is this. It's an embarrassing subject to talk about. And I talked about it here 2 years ago. And I'm going to talk about one area of it that pains me. I was involved in situations where pregnancies were terminated. And I'm not giving a lecture on abortion or the right to life. Because I don't believe in sin per se for punishment. But I did some real damage. Not only to her, but to me. But my fear and my pain and my worry about all of that caused me to do other actions. You know, it's not just one defect of character that starts. They cascade down. Now I've done this, and now I've got to do this, and now I've got to do this. And eventually I'm in the pit. No wonder I drank, huh? Bill Wilson had all kinds of phrases. I wrote some down. I don't even know if I want to read them yet. But he said, well, first of all, let's go back to something else that I've been taught here. I've been taught that our steps and the traditions are meant to reduce our egos. Sexual conduct raised my ego an awful lot. Prideful behavior always raises my ego. Approval can raise my ego. Nothing wrong with it in perspective for people better able to handle it. When it becomes my primary goal in any area, I'm guaranteed to feel pain and to cause hurt. I gave up families to have sex. In Step 6 in the 12 and 12 bill has a line in there that says, who can think of liking lust? Obviously, he'd never been to Stateline, but I liked it. I hate to admit it, but I thought it was a pretty good thing. I couldn't think past the moment sometimes. I couldn't think far enough down the road to the consequence. I knew better. And I'm not scolding myself just to stand up here to scold myself or to shame myself anymore, because I carry my own shame. You don't have to add on. I know what shame is. What I'm telling you is this, is I had no clue I was building layer after layer of shame, more and more pain. And I'm wondering why I'm drinking. Because alcohol worked for me even the last night I drank, to this one respect. I walked into that bar, no intention of stopping drinking. And when I sat down with my buddies and started to have a beer, I no longer had the shame anymore for a while. The guilt was gone. It didn't stay gone, but it was gone. And I wasn't so worried about the future anymore. Alcohol helps someone like me survive for a long time while it's doing the damage, while it's building up its own case to make me act even worse. I got into AA, and at one point somebody recommended to me maybe I should want to go to a Sex Anonymous meeting. And I was thinking about it. I thought, maybe there's some very promiscuous people there. I'll go. And I wouldn't mind slipping every week either. You know what I'm saying? I'm a newcomer again. But I didn't. I guess I'm making light of it for a lot of reasons. One is, I didn't see it coming being a problem. I mean, when I was in trouble, or I'd get the phone calls and somebody would say, well, I'm pregnant. That was trouble. But I could, just almost like drinking, I could forget the consequences of that action the next time I took some negative action. I'm not proud of those things. I hated having to talk on this topic today. I did it once. I thought a public confession was enough. Apparently Bob didn't, or didn't pay attention the first time. Let me sum up a couple of things. How would I have? 2 hours. Okay. I've been taught to take those actions better than the way I think and feel in spite of my defects of character. And I think the best thing I can do in the world is this. I ask God for guidance and direction, and I get it. And I'll use the formula that I've heard other people say for years. How do I know? Because I really have never had it so good. I have moments when that fear that I talked to you about is absolutely gone. I have moments where I can take a risk and not mind if I look bad and enjoy something that's happened. Those are big steps for me. They aren't tiny. They aren't something like, oh, a really big deal. Oh, yeah, they're fine. I am married and I don't fool around. Kind of sorry about that, but I just don't. I behave not because I think it's a sin. I behave because I think it's the right thing to do. I behave because I hurt fewer people when I behave. Is it always fun? No, it's not. To deny myself gratification is something I've never wanted to do. And yet, I've had the most unbelievable life here that I could have anywhere. We often hear what we believe God does. I told you I don't know what God does. But I want to finish up with a couple of quick stories, so I think they're wonderful. I was at a meeting one night, participation meeting, and a guy I sponsor raised his hand named Mark, and he said, well, I got an eviction notice today from my house. I guess God's trying to teach me a lesson. And after the meeting, I called him aside and I said, Mark, that wasn't God, that was your landlord. But I do the same thing, don't I? I blame God for things, or I attribute things to God that I don't know if they're accurate or not, but I do it anyway. But the other night I heard a real classic. A new guy we have in our meeting has been coming around 7 or 8 months, gotten fired from a job about 6-8 weeks ago. Then he got fired from another job this week, last Monday. And he's sharing about it. I said, well, I got fired. And he goes, you know what? I realize God is doing for me what I cannot do for myself. And everybody sat quietly as he explained. I didn't like that job, but I was afraid to leave, so God had me fired. We pointed out to him it was because he was talking on his phone during work that he got fired. But I think God has got to, if he pays attention, and I assume he does, to my belief or my friends' beliefs about what the higher power does or doesn't do, he's got to be pretty amused. Here's what I think God really wants. It says in the book, we insist on being happy, joyous, and free. We insist on enjoying life. I've been saying this for a while, but it's true for me. I've changed it. I want to be content. I want to be okay who I am without you telling me I'm okay. I want to be free from the bondage of a self that requires you to make me be okay or bad or good or anything else. Now, I don't mean other people's opinion don't matter. They matter. What I mean is I don't want to labor under them. I don't want to have to dress a certain way, look a certain way, say a certain thing in order to get your approval. Real freedom from bondage for me is this. Number one, the thought of drinking left me when I was 90 days sober, when I got on my knees and I asked God to remove it. I was in such pain that day. Honest to God, when I stood up, it was gone, and I've never had the urge to come back in all these years, and I'm a bad drunk. But that miracle in itself should be impressive enough for me to just really surrender, but it isn't. But listening to you talk about your surrenders, listen to you talk about your resentments, about your pain, about the things you've done and how you've handled them is what I then try to do. When my daughter got diagnosed with that cancer, a thought came back to me about that friend of mine named Barbara when she got diagnosed with her MS. And she said she went to her women's meeting. And she said, where's that loving God that's supposed to love us? And a lady said to her, Hun, God was just as sad when you got that diagnosis as you are. He'll be there to help you through it. For reasons I will never understand as a human, God seems to love me in spite of my defects of character and not punish me. He lets me pick up the tab for my own bad actions, but is always there as soon as I turn back to him. So if you're having trouble with fear like I do, here's what I tried to do before I came over here today. I asked God, please remove my fear enough and let me, if the steps are designed to reduce my ego, there is nothing more ego-reducing than to, number one, do an inventory and then to tell another human being the deep, dark, shameful secrets. That's the first active outward act I took in trying to have some type of ego reduction. And the other one is telling the truth from a podium. And I don't mean every detail of the truth. I mean telling you, sometimes life just struggles for me. Sometimes I suffer. And I don't have any real reason to. But that isn't the point. The point is this. Pain helps me stay contacted to God. Without it, I wouldn't even come to the meetings anymore. Without it, I wouldn't give up. I wouldn't spend the time on the phone listening to people I don't want to listen to. Without it, I wouldn't do most things. I don't like it. But who cares? My job is to be around you during the day and you not have to know how I feel all the time. That you don't have to know that I'm mad, upset, don't like what you like. None of it. That I can just be a person. I can say that when I'm in pain, that I just want to be right in the middle of the crowd, but you know what? Ego comes back. Ego always comes back, I've been taught. Dr. Harry Tebow said, ego is the arch enemy of sobriety. The need to be somebody. The need to be special. Now, I want that, but I don't want the pain with it. And so what I try to do on a daily basis is to surrender, to quit trying to run my own life. Some of you have said it so well previously today. It is impossible to run my life, and yet I try to do something that's impossible, and I stay angry. I stay fearful. Why don't I trust God enough because I don't know what God does. I just don't know. And sometimes I have to come around and have you tell me, no, really, if you let go of that, you'll get through your daughter situation. You'll get the job you didn't think you could get. You'll have good things happen. Because I can't give myself the one ingredient that I need the most, and that's hope. Thanks for letting me share.